Hello everyone and welcome back to the Neurodiverse event here by Dyslexia Box. Hope everyone's well. I hope you have enjoyed our first session. Of course, we've had some amazing people on there. I'm just bringing up my script here so I can see and remind everyone's name. Of course, we had Deborah first from Dyslexia Box, which did that talk about how we assess for dyslexia, how we support dyslexics in the workplace. We've had Matt Dean talking about AtWorks. We had Lauren talking about Allcam. And of course, we've got Liam with us from MatchWare, who's going to talk about, I'm assuming talking about, and you should never assume, about MindView. Is that correct?
Yes, correct, yeah.
That's it, that's fine. We've got the right person at the right time. So don't forget, keep putting your chat messages in that chat. We're going to answer some of them questions later, I am. And of course, we've got a few people, of course, answering everyone's questions. So I'm going to hand over to you, Liam, for your presentation and then your quick demo. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Dyslexia Box, for the kind invitation to come and speak to you all today. If you haven't met me before, my name's Liam. Here at MindView, I kind of wear all the hats regarding assistive technology. So that's not just workplace adjustments, that's also looking at academic adjustments through the disabled student allowance, and also as an inclusive strategy for institutions, businesses, local governments who want to just take mind mapping to the masses in their business, basically. So basically, over the next kind of 45 minutes, my objective is obviously to get you all very excited about mind mapping. We're going to have a quick look at the kind of principles behind it. What are some of the objectives of implementing mind mapping into the business? And then I'm going to give you a kind of real world kind of example in MindView, a quick demo of the software, but again, principally the takeaways from how mind mapping can improve productivity and support individuals with neurodiversity in the workplace. So let's just bring up the next slides here. Excellent. So so we're going to look at how mind mapping supports neurodiversity in the workplace. So yes, we'll be talking about adjustments and how MindView can be used as a kind of tailored support for individuals with disabilities, mental health conditions. But I think really what you should see this assistive technology as is a means by which you can improve or give a little boost to your personal productivity. One of the great themes of using mind mapping technology is the ability to go from idea generation to documented outputs like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Microsoft Project, without having to replicate information from scratch. So even before you start talking about some of the barriers of neurodiversity, perhaps low working memory, for example, where transferring information from one format to another is time consuming and frustrating. This has lots of productivity gains in there that help just on an inclusive level for anyone who wants to work in this particular way. So of course there's lots of, this is the hard sell at the very beginning. It gets fun from here, but there's loads and loads of mind mapping softwares in the market. There are freewares online. There's even pieces of paper with colorful pens that you could use for mind mapping. So when we're looking at MindView, we really focus on three kind of core areas to make our software like the most appropriate mind mapping software for workplace adjustments. The top we kind of covered already. We'll have a look at the productivity elements of the tool. I kind of want to focus on the bottom two here. So built into MindView, after our kind of 10 years plus experience of working with the Disabled Students Allowance, access to work, workplace adjustments, we have built a lot of our own assistive features into the software. So kind of native to MindView now are things like a read aloud function, a dictation function, keyboard only shortcuts, low contrast mode, high contrast mode, and lots of functionality again that just helps to go from just visual planning into formalized documents at a click of a button. And the one kind of bottom right hand corner, this is a really important one because again, through our experience of working with anything from large corporates through to local governments, NGOs, etc., is when you're putting a piece of software onto your estate, you need to make sure that that piece of software can be used by all employees, regardless of disability or severity of a disability. So one thing we do with our software every time we have a new release or every time the guidelines change is have our software audited by a third party to help us develop our software that it can work, like I said, for all individuals regardless of disability. But also an important piece of that is that MindView works out of the box with all of the other technical packages that you might be recommending to an individual user. So as you've probably experienced, when someone has an assessment and they're recommended a series of technical adjustments, mind mapping isn't going to be something that just is given in isolation. You're going to get kind of like a mind mapping, maybe text to speech, speech to text software, perhaps visual impairment software, JAWS, Zoom text, lots of different tools out there for assistive purposes. And it's very reassuring that as a result of our compliance, MindView works out of the box with all of those technical adjustments. So it really makes it kind of a coherent strategy, which I think is really important. Now, to help us achieve that, I choose my computer to change slide, back to my phone. To help us achieve that, we worked with this organization here. They're called the Digital Accessibility Center. I like to plug them every now and again because they do some fantastic work. They have a brilliant team of web analysts, computer specialists, all of whom have disabilities themselves, from neurodiversities, physical impairments, visual impairments, hearing impairments, and they really test our software to death. And that report we get is invaluable to make sure that what we're producing is truly accessible to everyone. And just to kind of highlight one of those, if you're a Dragon user, not only can you dictate with MindView your ideas into the mind map and into the text notes, but you can actually manipulate the full functionality of MindView with just your voice. So there are native voice commands built into MindView that enable you to access all of the functionality of the tool with those voice prompts, which is kind of critical. Looking at mind mapping holistically, especially when you assign that with technology, I kind of beat the drum already about increased productivity, and that will make more sense as we go through this. But you will see it has a positive impact on communication, especially when you're collaborating with multiple people and you've got a team of people who just think and digest information in different ways. That's because we often refer to mind mapping as appealing to both the left and the right brain thinkers. There's something about the structure and the hierarchical design of a mind map that when you are brainstorming together or disseminating information across a group, where sometimes a list is favorable to one cohort and not another, and maybe a more kind of visual, organic, kind of pictorial is great for one and not the other. Mind mapping has that wonderful way of bridging the gap between the two. So you'll often find that really does help to drive good communication amongst groups. But we know that from lots of studies from mind mapping, it has an improved impact on memory recall. So it actually not only helps to improve memory recall, but it helps to speed up learning concepts, especially when you assign information to visual cues like colors and images. Users are able to recall information more efficiently because at the point of wanting to recall that information, they're actually kind of doing that typical look up. They're accessing their visual memory banks and they're seeing the color yellow. That relates to this portion of the project. That's that information. And then that information can be accessed more efficiently. So that's why it's great for prepping a presentation, for exam preparations, or if you have to learn new language for a specific profession. It's a really great way of helping to do that. A better method of organization, that'll make more sense when we're in the software itself. But not to put it last on this list, but not to be undervalued, is the fact that it helps to reduce stress and anxiety when associating with work. Because mind mapping has this really wonderful quality of, firstly, just getting thoughts and ideas out of your mind. So let's say, for instance, you've been given this really large assignment or a really large project. In your mind, that project might feel massive. And if you leave it there, it's going to get bigger, the fear factor increases, and that belief that you're going to actually achieve a good positive outcome kind of shrinks because the imagination kind of runs wild. So the ability to see the big picture as well as the detail often leads to individuals feeling a lot more calmer when approaching work, because there's that belief that, okay, I'm just taking things one at a time. I can really access that information easily, but I can see that big picture, and it's not as scary as if you left it in your mind. Plus, when you see later on this lovely integration between MindView and Microsoft Office, it helps to create really beautiful formatted documents. So again, helping to reduce the stress associated with, am I producing information that looks good? Am I producing information that's appropriately being presented to my stakeholders, be it clients, be it internal? So there's loads and loads of benefits associated with mental health when we're looking at mind mapping. Okay, so just so that we're all on the very same page here, and I know you've probably all drawn mind maps before. If it wasn't in school, maybe you've got the whiteboard out in the office and you've drawn out diagrams. Just so we're all on the same page, let's just label what a mind map is. Essentially, it's a structure of information, and it's often referred to as like an organic structure or a radial structure of information. And it's got a very defined hierarchy. So you start with a central root, with then branches and sub-branches exploding outwards. If you're in America, you might say parent branches and child branches, and continue to go throughout the whole family if you wanted to. But the lovely structure of this helps you to break down concepts into its smaller, more manageable parts. You can isolate how information relates to one another. And it's really important that when building a mind map that you don't flood those individual branches with full sentences and paragraphs of information. Just a couple of keywords, perhaps a lovely image and colors to help recall that information and access information in a more efficient manner. Now, if you want to really deep dive into some of the theory behind mind mapping, then Tony Buzan is largely credited with the modernized techniques of mind mapping. So do go check him out if you want to kind of get into more theory behind that. But in the business, where are you going to see mind mapping being used? Because it's not just going to be used in isolation by that individual who's been receiving MindView as a result of their technical adjustments. Of course, brainstorming in groups, that makes sense. It's helped with report writing. It helps with meeting management. My example today will be actually how to run a more efficient meeting with mind mapping. Project management as well is a really, really big area to target when demonstrating MindView into your business. We actually started life as a tool just for project managers. We have project management offices all over the world who will use MindView as an alternative to Microsoft Project or other project planning softwares. So really do kind of put that in the back of your mind that if you're looking for stakeholders in the business, your project management office are going to bite your hand off for this sort of tool. But anything from strategic planning, problem solving, risk management, and decision making. I'm sure the guys at Dyslexia Box are going to make these slides available to you. So I'm just going to go through these just here. So in my updated slide, I actually had the credit here on this Venn diagram for Mary Coley, who made this brilliant visual representation of the makeup of neurodiversity in this Venn diagram. When introducing MindView to new users, I'm always coming across people who aren't really aware of the word neurodiversity, what it means, very familiar with dyslexia. It's kind of become the pin-up neurodiverse trait for lots of parents, users, etc. But it's really important to see that a lot of these neurodiverse traits overlap one another and have some commonalities. Well, with this slide that we send you, we've also put into kind of just some simple blue text here. You can't see it very well on the screen. It's just some key words again as to how mind mapping can help address some of the tendencies you find within these neurodiverse areas. So just the ability to capture ideas quickly, organize thoughts, structure plans in a lovely non-linear way, and produce multiple document styles without having to replicate the information from scratch. But that's something that we can share with you. Well, you're going to get these slides. We've got a bit more detail as well to share a bit later on. Okay, so a little bit about who we work with, but you can find this on our website. I'm not going to spend too much time here. I think what's important to point out, though, in the world of reasonable adjustments, in the disabled students allowance, MindView is recommended. I think we're now about 85% of the time when mind mapping is recommended to students for their DSA. I don't know the exact numbers for access to work, but I think and workplace adjustments, but it's kind of heading in the same direction. But okay, so this slide is meant to be blank, and what we're going to do is I call it a scientific experiment, but it's not really a scientific experiment, but we're going to have some fun with this anyway. Today, I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir. You guys are probably an empathetic bunch, plus, but what this little experiment is designed to do is help drive empathy even further for individuals who are presented with information that's in a format that doesn't appeal to their method of digesting information. So be that visual, be that auditory, be that linear, be it non-linear, whatever your method, this is designed to help you understand what it feels like to be presented with information that just doesn't make sense to you. So we're going to do that by doing a little exercise. So the next slide that I show you is going to have the numbers 1 through to 35 just scattered all over the screen in no particular order. And your objective is to count those numbers in sequence. So find 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and so on and so forth, all the way up to 35. And I'm going to give you roughly 10 seconds to complete that objective, and we'll see how you get on. All right. So counting from 1 through to 35 on the next slide. So in 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So it's normally at this point that I get everyone to put their hands down, those who reach 35. No, not many people, if anyone, has reached 35 on the first time of seeing this. But, when I am in physical spaces pre-COVID, when we used to do this little test, we draw down what numbers do people get to. There's normally 3s, 4s, 8 tends to be the highest number. So if you did above 8, you're doing very well. But typically 2s and 3s. But what I want you to reflect on more is how that felt. So typically the words that come out when we're reflecting on how that task felt is things like confusing, overwhelming, stressful, all these words, anxious, all these words that associate with just not a very nice feeling. And again, when I get to do this in person, what I love observing in a room of people who are doing this are all of the coping strategies that this test just kind of bubbles to the surface. So you get lots of people verbalizing the number that they're on. It's kind of like a cry out for help. So they go 3, 3, 3, and hopefully their mate next to them nudges them and say, it's that one there. Oh, great, thanks. 4, 4. Lots of head movers, people wanting to demonstrate that I'm taking this seriously, I'm working hard. I might not be making much progress, but boy, I'm making a lot of effort to not make any progress. And lots of giggles, lots of anxious, and then obviously those people who just sit there and just go, this is horrible, I'm just not even going to bother trying. And I managed to achieve that with just random numbers on the screen. There was no inherent value, right, to the data that I was displaying to you. So you've got to really think about how that would be a heightened sense of whatever you were feeling if it was actually serious information that you had to capture, that you had to digest, especially with that time limit of 10 seconds that added another little dimension to it. So let's have a look at these numbers again. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply a very simple structure to this. And hidden behind the chaos was a sequence all along. So if you start at the top left-hand corner and work your way right, you'll see you've got 1, 2, 3. Next layer down, 4, 5, 6. Next layer down, 7, 8, 9. Back to the top, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And it's kind of like a crude experiment, like I said, but what you should then feel when you reflect on it is that moment of, and somebody go, okay, yeah, good one, I get that. But it's maybe your shoulders have even relaxed a little bit and it's kind of feeling a lot easier. And really that's the objective sometimes of just implementing a mind mapping software is just to get someone to have that penny drop moment. Oh, that makes sense to me now. Oh, okay. Oh, this isn't stressful now. Oh, I can actually see a pattern and I can recall information. I can digest that information quicker than in that other style that was before. And like I said, that's pretty much what you achieve when you show someone mind mapping strategies who love to see organic structures, radial structures, or this lovely hierarchical design of a mind map. Because in this example here, let's say I'm planning post-COVID vacations. We're going to go very clearly. You can see the countries that we're going to go to. It's got those lovely clear flags on there. We've got some ideas of what we're going to do on this holiday. But ultimately, be it in the workplace, be it in the academic setting, we all have to produce documentation that looks a little bit more like this kind of formatted, linear, hierarchical style document. And this is actually quite a nice list if you think about it. You've got colors depicting those main ideas and then some bullet points and some numbering sequence. But this is the exact same data that we had on that mind map. Now, I know I'm a visual thinker. I'm that way inclined. So when I look at a list like this, I'm going through that list and I'm having to go back to the top again to remind myself what's in there. And no matter how many times I go through that list, it isn't going to stick. And that's on just one page. You multiply that over 10, 12, 13 pages, you can see why people in a team won't read the documentation. You see why people have tough times pulling out the relevant information from a policy, from an RFP, from whatever it might be. Or even when you're working in these documents, when you are deep into the third paragraph of point 2, point 3, point 2, point 1, and ideas come into your mind, it's difficult to know, okay, where in the big picture does that belong? Scroll between pages to find that information. So really that's the kind of big payoff here with MindView and mind mapping, is that the mind mapping bit unlocks those ideas, overcomes the barriers of big picture thinking, as well as organizing information and accessing data. But the big productivity or the big payoff moment, or I call it the wide eye moment, because when you show this to new users for the first time, their eyes just get a little bit bigger than they were before, is the ability to convert that into Office documents without having to repeat yourself, without having to start from scratch every single time. And also here on the right-hand side of this slide, we don't just have a mind map feature in MindView, we've got different layouts of the mind map. So sometimes a kind of top-down structure or left to right, right to left structure gets that penny drop moment. Or with project managers going from the mind map into a Gantt chart, or visualizing a timeline and a visual action plan, or an outline like a spreadsheet. It's no big secret what we're doing here with MindView. It's the same data. We're just displaying it in different views, in different formats for different outputs, without replicating that information from scratch again and again and again and again. Okay, so big productivity gains. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to jump into the software and give you a bit of a working example with the time that I've got left. So let me just share my screen. Now, if I remember the right button to press here, things will go well. Excellent. Okay. So you should be seeing my screen. Now, the first thing I'm just going to kind of say to everyone on this call as well is we've just put the finishing touches on a new report, a new white paper that looks and examines the benefits of mind mapping for workplace adjustments. So this is available to everyone. If you're interested in getting a copy, I can obviously share details so you can get this. But it's a really detailed breakdown of the theory behind mind mapping, how it supports productivity and neurodiversity in the workplace. If I scroll down through this a little bit further, we've cited loads of source for further information behind that. And at the very bottom, we've got a fantastic case study from an individual in the workplace at Lloyds Bank who received MindView as part of their adjustments package. And they go into great detail about how the challenge of having ADHD, being on the autistic spectrum in the workplace, it was difficult to organize ideas, difficult to communicate ideas, and MindView just helped to unlock that. And so really, really great case study to better understand how that works in the workplace. But let's jump into the software. Okay, so here we are. Just from a technical perspective, MindView is an application on the Windows platform. There's an application for the Mac, and there's also an online browser-based version of MindView. A single license of MindView for a user enables them to access MindView on all of those platforms. And in fact, they can access it on an unlimited number of devices. We've recently moved away from license keys to a user account method. So a user would just log in using perhaps their Office 365 login, their Google login, or their username and password, and they can access MindView when hot desking or when working from home, multiple devices, whatever you want. Now, I'm a Windows user, so I'm using the Windows version today. And one of the really important things to point out about MindView's Windows platform is that it's identical in its look and feel to Microsoft Office. So when it comes to implementing the tool, the requirement for training is actually, I don't want to say you don't need training, but it's quite low. I think a lot of trainers who I've worked with tell me that by the time they actually get to the individual to do the training, out of all of the other things that were given to them, MindView is the one that they've already opened and started to use because it looks and plays and acts like Microsoft Office. So it fits into the workplace really well, and it's very intuitive for new users. I think that's also got a really positive, inclusive element to it because it doesn't then look and feel like a specialist piece of software that's being given to an individual. So for that individual who's perhaps wanting to remain a little bit more discreet about the fact that they have received support, this doesn't scream, I've received a technical adjustment. And in fact, the feedback that they'll get is loads of people just say, God, where did you get that? I want that. And loads of those kind of comments. But we've got this lovely kind of ribbon toolbar at the top of the page with nice icons depicting the functionality. And then the space beneath is where we actually build out our ideas. And like I said, use it like you would use Microsoft Word and you won't go wrong. Now, when it comes to actually building out ideas in the mind map, there's loads of ways you can do this. Like I said, this is our root in the middle here. And I can use just keyboard shortcuts to start branching out a new branch and just start typing an idea. Press enter to create a new branch. Again, enter, enter. And if I want to go away from the center, I just press the insert icon, a keyboard shortcut, and start typing an idea. So enter, 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 insert, insert, enter, enter, enter. Okay. And what MindView will automate is that process of creating hierarchy and fanning out the ideas so they're equally spaced across the screen, which is really, really satisfying to start seeing those ideas start to come to shape. Now you can create that same outcome by using the ribbon toolbar at the top, press branch and press sub branch up here. But one of the key features of MindView, again, when we're just at this idea generation stage, is to generate ideas that aren't yet connected onto the mind map. And I heard this called lots of different things, from brain dumping to mind vomit, students like that one, or thought grenade. It's just that process of going, right, whatever's in your mind, don't worry about hierarchy, structure, sequence, just get it out onto the page and then we'll organize it later. So to achieve that with MindView, all you do is double click into the background. And maybe that's where you start putting a keyword and click again and put another keyword over there and double click and put another keyword over there and double click. You know what I'm getting at here. Okay. And I tell you what, this has a really a very good benefit for both ends of the spectrum. And what I mean by that is for those people who have got loads of ideas, but it is a mess in their mind and they don't know what their mind map's going to look like and they just want to throw themselves into it, this helps just to get everything out from your mind and just help get it out in front of you to visually organize it and get that information into the right place. But at the other end, you'll have people who, when given an assignment, given a project, will sit on it, almost terrified to get started because they've got writer's block. They don't know where to begin. They feel like the scale of the project in front of them is just so daunting that they just don't know how to get started. Well, this strategy, be it when you're working independently or working with a group, just get one idea out onto the page. And that tends to then spark another And then, oh, that reminds me, that puts an idea over here and another idea. And sometimes MindView is recommended to individuals just to get started, just to avoid that procrastination process and just get straight into getting ideas onto the page, get some momentum and get going. And the beauty then again of having just things dumped onto the page is that we can then drag and drop and start to perhaps build relationships of information. Okay, where does stuff go? Perhaps start with multiple clusters of ideas, and you can see these clusters then get bigger and bigger until ultimately they end up on that mind map with one central idea, with then those multiple ideas just kind of fanning out and just exploding from that central theme outwards. Okay. So in short, you go from a blank page, then having stuff dumped out onto the page, and you can start organizing it more efficiently. Now, just like that slide I showed you earlier, where hidden behind the chaos of those numbers was a set structure, in MindView, we also help individuals to visually sequence their information. So the best way to visualize that on here is just to turn on this numbering scheme. So by doing that, you'll actually notice that the mind map is read in a certain order. So we start at number 1 on the clock face, and we read those ideas clockwise around the center, and even number those outer branches as well. So as you can see, as I'm just making more ideas here, that numbering scheme is just applied onto those ideas automatically. So that's great because, again, in a lovely visual way, you can organize that information, you can reorder things and move it around, and okay, that numbering scheme just updates for us automatically. But even more powerful than that is when we do export this document over to Word, over to PowerPoint, it's not just putting an image, right, of the mind map onto a Word document. It's doing way more than that. It's taking the hierarchy of the mind map and converting main branches into main header styles, sub-branches into subheaders. So essentially you've got main branches as main chapters, sub-branches as sub-chapters. And then it's using that radial sequence to then format the linear sequence of that document. So for instance, when I export this out to Word, plot would be my first chapter, character, second main chapter, and these would be the subheaders of those individual sections. So when you understand that, you'll actually find it's way, way easier to live in the mind map right up until the point where you need to create that report, create that documentation, rather than, okay, use the mind map, then go into Word and then have to move things around in Word or build out your content in Word. And I think that's, again, a fundamental change here with this strategy is we all know what mind mapping is. You go into the conference room and it's that thing you do on that whiteboard, which 5 weeks later is still there and it hasn't changed and no one's referring back to it. Because as soon as you leave that plan that's on a piece of paper and you go off to do the project, things change, things move. And that drawn out white paper in the corner is become obsolete as soon as you move on. So with this, it kind of, you're using the mind map as things change, as things move, as your one-stop shop for doing the work, not just for planning the work. Okay. So again, I'm a bit short on time. So one of the examples I'm going to give here is, let's imagine then that we are planning for that big team meeting, that end of month team meeting. And we've been given the task of creating the agenda and disseminating the agenda and all of its documents and even the meeting minutes after the meeting out to all of our stakeholders. So let's call this team meeting. And I'm not going to get any audience participation today on this one, so I'm just going to very quickly generate some ideas. We have a welcome. I need to think about that. Maybe there are some projects that people are working on and need the updates. Reports. So I'm just using that double click method again, just to dump ideas out onto the screen. Team issues. And last but not least, let's do any other business. Okay, so as things are on the page, that helps to remind me that, okay, what are those reports? So we've got a CEO report that we want to kind of review, and there's a CFO report. Great. In the projects, I have Project X and Project Y. Cool. And under team issues, my coffee machine, where the coffee machine is broken. Machine is broken, and perhaps a bit more of a serious one here, returning to the office. Going to divide opinion, of course, so that might be a bit of a team issue. Anyway, let me just correct that spelling. So again, just reinforcing that first stage. You can just sit there and you can just get ideas out onto the page. There's no right, there's no wrong, you're just getting it out onto that page. But I do want to have one lovely structure of the mind map. So let's bring these ideas in. Team issues, reports, projects, welcome, and any other business. And because I have left that numbering sequence on, of course, this helps me to realize, well, of course, team issues, we're not going to kick off that. We've got a welcome. We're going to put that up here. Then we've got the reports. And in fact, I want team issues to be the kind of the last thing I want to talk about. I don't want to avoid it, but I want it to be the last thing. So again, really quickly, you can go from having ideas dumped onto the page, then even when you're working collaboratively, reorganize, resequence things without having to recreate that information from scratch. So again, one of the great advantages of this being a technology is that on these branches, you can basically add any type of content. You can really turn your mind map into a bit of a visual organizer where perhaps for a single project, you can have all your project assets. When disseminating information to the team, you can have everything embedded onto the branches. Or even when you're doing like report writing, instead of writing the sentences onto the branch like I spoke about earlier, you can use this feature here, the text note editor feature, as a way of helping to essentially chunk out the report and then within the text note editor, bring out the paragraphs and the more detailed information relating to this individual section up here. Now you'll notice as I went into the text note editor, all of the functionality at the top has now adapted to look like Microsoft Word. So again, the best way to describe this text note editor is like having a word processor built into your mind map. You can just do all of your writing in one place. I think it's one of the most significant recommendations of mind mapping, both in the DSA and workplace adjustments, is that it helps with writing, extended writing strategies. Okay, so let's use this dictate function. We will review the CEO report. Full stop, new line. Okay, so this dictate engine is the same engine that powers Microsoft Dictate. We have then under the review tab, our own read aloud. Again, that's powered by the functionality of Microsoft Read Aloud and lots of other assistive features. I would say you're probably going to have Dragon or something of that like if you've received a technical adjustment. So this isn't designed to replace that, but we're an accessible software. And regardless of what device you're accessing it on, you might not have Dragon there, at least in MindView in both the Mac, the Windows version, you've got dictation. So if that's your way of working, it's in there automatically. But you'll notice then, as I kind of close this text note editor, a paperclip appears on CEO report, basically just showing us that there's something embedded on this branch. Hover over it, get that text note editor. So again, piece by piece, you can start to build out your content, be it details from the project, be it report writing, content building. And it doesn't all have to get done at the same time. So, if you're working with individuals who have 15, 20 minutes of good quality work in them, they can capture that really, really quickly, get information onto the page, and make something meaningful. Again, the advantage of mind mapping versus doing this in, say, a Word document is you can leave this and come back to it, and very, very quickly that mind map helps you pick up where you last left off. Compare that to a Word document where you're kind of perhaps scrolling through it and kind of, God, where was the information, et cetera, and just kind of getting started on that again is really difficult. But just to kind of speed this up, you can add images onto the branches. We've got our own picture catalog with loads of images on here. You can copy paste it from different websites. It's entirely up to you. Add documents, links to SharePoint, links to websites, sound files, video files. There's really no limit, right, to how much stuff you put onto an individual branch. I just realized my computer might die in just a second. Let me just turn on that. Excellent. So you've gone from a blank page, you've dumped your ideas, you've created that lovely visual outline to help you plan and organize your information, but then you've continued to use that mind map to capture the client's requirements, to make notes about information that you've received in a meeting, or just to write your reports and put everything into one place. Okay, so good old Blue Peter fashion. Let me just go to one that I made earlier. So workplace adjustments. Let's go to, I didn't save it. That's not very good, Liam, is it? File, my templates. Here we go, agenda complete. So I'm just going to fast forward here. And in this example, I've got a more complete agenda style document. So I've used colors to help isolate each section of the mind map. I've got a few more paper clips. If I hover over the paper clip, it's just a bit more text. In this example, it's almost like I've captured the meeting discussion and the minutes instead of just the outline of the agenda. But I've also embedded some documents. So again, hover over those, you'll see we've got a paper clip, we've got an Excel document. Click that Excel document and it just launches it in the native format. So again, no more having to search through folder structures to find that relevant information, to, oh God, where did I put that document, or access that relevant information. It's there at a click of a button. And that's what I meant earlier on by using this as an improved method of organization. Everything you need relating to this policy, this project, whatever you're doing, is where you need to find it, okay? But this is the big kind of payoff now, the ability to turn this mind map into other formats. So we'll start off with the word export. And MindView's exports, they're all template driven. So what I mean by that is we've got loads of different template styles built into the software that really make your work look awesome, right? It makes kind of an hour's work look like a week's worth of work, which can be your best kept secret if you want it to be. But as well as the templates here, you can use your organization's template. So if your business have defined a Word template with the right header, footer, company logo, company colors, etc., you can export onto that template and it will format the content into that particular template, okay? Now, in addition to that, you can, of course, customize exactly what you want to include in your document. So, for example, I don't want the images of the mind map to be present on the report. Just doesn't need to be on there, so I can just turn that off. But you save it to your computer. It will work with Microsoft Word to create this lovely formatted document. But just from a technical perspective, you don't need Office installed to run these exports. You can open it in Google Docs, you can open it in Apple Pages, Office 365. I've just got Word installed, so it's automatically going to open in Word for us. Okay, so we've got our meeting agenda. I left a title page in here to make it look really fancy. So meeting agenda, scroll down, we've got today's date in the footer in this particular template. Now I left the image of the mind map in here just to kind of help illustrate how this document has been created. So look, it's created the main branches as main headers, main chapter titles, sub-branches as the subheaders, and it's automated that process of the numbering sequence being that radial structure into that linear outline. As a result of that as well, it's also created a table of contents, which is a proper table of contents. Not just a plain text. You can click on opening remarks and it takes you down to that section. And this is the real kind of big payoff. All of the different items that you've built out into that mind map, as you've captured that information, as you've been building and compiling that report, has now been stitched together essentially into one coherent linear document, ready for distribution to stakeholders, ready for archiving, whatever it is that your end goal might be. But there we go. Welcome, purpose of the meeting, the minutes from the last meeting, and there's the link to the PDF of that. Just keep scrolling down. Any Office documents that were embedded are now actually truly embedded into the Word document. So if I shared this with people, it's like having an attachment in PDF, right? It's actually part of that Word document. So actually a nice way of providing appendices without having, page after page after page at the end of appendices. It's just embedded as a document here. And these are just now the headers because I didn't have any content on any of those other branches. But that's a real kind of wide-eye moment for users who do struggle with this type of working, because they've struggled perhaps their whole career to formulate these documents. It's taken them a really long time. They've worked late into the nights. They've pushed deadlines, and you're now showing them a way that just automates that process. And I've had people, grown adults, cry when I show them this, and I don't think that's a result of my personality. Maybe if you're all crying right now, maybe that's the case, but it's a result of being able to show them a way that appeals to their way of working without it being something that's complicated and convoluted. I'm just going to show you, because I've got literally 1 minute left. Let's export this out to PowerPoint now. Again, you can choose our slides, your company slides, or just leave it blank. The beauty of leaving it blank is that it works beautifully with the design ideas of PowerPoint if you really wanted to use that feature. So it's just a blank outline. The first slide introduces us to the main branches. It then takes us around the sequence of the mind map. I do have text. Just make that text box bigger, and it automatically makes the text box bigger. But if I go to design ideas, MindView's way of displaying that information just automates that process of turning these slides into just something just really killer, right? So again, it's that productivity tool. You go from idea generation into something that's really formatted, ready to go without having to replicate any. Oh, that's actually that one there. Replicating that information from scratch. And I challenge you to produce the outputs that I've produced, a plan, a Word document, a PowerPoint document from scratch in each other version in the time that it's taken me to do this. Okay. Now I've got to go because I don't want to eat into the next presenter's time, but there is more to it. There's, like I said, a built-in timeline. There's even a fully functional Gantt chart built into the software, so you can go from brainstorming into project planning at a click of a button. And this is, like I said, a comparison to Microsoft Project. So when you find out how much Microsoft Project costs, you might get a little bit more interested in MindView as well. But to summarize, hopefully you've learned a bit more about mind mapping today, that lovely hierarchical way of organizing information. It helps to improve productivity, memory recall, organizing information, communication, but just help to reduce stress and anxiety when it comes to workload. We went from having a blank page, we dumped our ideas in the way that suited my way of thinking, to then organizing that lovely hierarchy and sequence of this plan. I then used that outline to compile all my content, text notes, images, attachments, whatever, all in one place, with then the big old payoff being those exports to Word and PowerPoint to create formatted documents without having to replicate information from scratch. But if you want to get your teeth into this, I'm not going to plug my email address here. Maybe you can ask the event organizers to be either to allow us to contact you or to contact us. We can give you access to MindView for 30 days for free, and also provide you with this very kind of detailed report of how mind mapping makes an impact in the workplace. Okay. Aaron, stop the clock. Maybe I have to stop sharing first. Here we are.
Hello, thank you, Liam. So, Liam, do you want to stop sharing your screen and then you can share your camera? So, there you are. You're back again. I can see you now. What an amazing presentation there. I'm a massive fan of MindView, as you know. I really enjoy using it, and the comments that have been coming through, I think people are saying, I really want to use this for my dissertation, should have used this for my PhD, and yep. That thing, and even the guys I've got with me here managing everything, they all want it now as well, because they're going to change their life in their dissertations as well. So it's been brilliant. It's I want to thank you, Liam, for doing that amazing presentation. So